Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Masterclass with Danny, and thank you for being part of a Set the Standard presentation. So Danny has come in and offered his time today to give to us all of his lessons and all of his teachings about how to upgrade your own frequency. Obviously, for those who know Danny, he's an absolute stud. He is an absolute professional in the realms of fitness and mindset and bringing them together and using it all, which has been so fantastic. I've been absolutely blessed to have, developed a high quality friendship with Danny and be in his circle and being around him. And I'm just so excited that he is coming down today to present to us. So I would love for everyone to bring their best energy, get their notepad, and pad paper ready to take down some notes. I've got my tablet right here. I'm super excited. And with also this one, I know Danny likes to keep this conversational. So get ready to chuck your mic on and off. How we would do it is if you've got something to say, just please raise a hand. We'll be managing. There's like a section in Zoom where you can click reaction and raise a hand. It looks like this. Please use that. And then also what we do is we also use the chat function. Please go absolutely nuts in the chat function, because when we record this Zoom, we can take all of the lessons and the learnings and the teaching. We can send them to Danny after if we need, and we can talk about them. We can figure out whatever those questions or comments are, because if there's anything that's blowing your mind, please be like, this is blowing my mind, and tell us why, because we'll send it all on to Danny later, which will also make him feel really special and really thankful for coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spotlight Danny. And also just letting you know, you can get the access to the recording after this as well. Please message myself or Bo, the Set the Standard community page. We'll send it on through to you. But we're going to spotlight Danny, and he is going to take the lead from here. So huge welcome, Danny. Thank you for coming, and it's go time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Corey. Very much appreciated for you guys reaching out to get me on. Obviously, I was super grateful to connect with you, Corey, not too long ago. I feel like we've connected on many different levels. And even when we recorded our pod, it was super nice to connect with someone who's on that same frequency and doing a lot of this good work. And having that mixture of obviously the physical and the mental aspect, and someone who's super vulnerable and brings so much value to other people's lives, which is something that I guess pride myself on trying to do, and something that I've always done. And it's so nice to continue to network with other people like that, including everyone on the call. So firstly, I'm just super grateful that you're all here. I've been really excited for this one. I love having these conversations. And as Corey mentioned, it is a conversation. So I don't want you to feel like you have to sit there and just kind of listen to me talk shit for the next, however long you end up talking for. I want you to make sure that you can jump in and have your say and ask any questions, and we'll keep it super conversational. One thing I'll mention before we start, and maybe Corey and Bo give this a bit of a flag if this is not okay, but if anyone who's listened to my podcast, you'll actually understand that I do keep things quite casual, and I tend to swear a little bit. Now, it's not intentional, but I hope it doesn't offend anyone. But either way, the way I usually present, again, if you listen to my podcast, I always keep it very relaxed, very conversational. I don't like to plan too far ahead in terms of having a very strict structure to go off. And I just want to say that the stuff I'm talking about today is stuff that I've experienced. I always make a point to never try and coach anyone on anything that I haven't experienced myself. I don't try and tell people what to do. I go out and experience certain things, share my experiences, and hopefully people can take value from that and use it and use those learnings and implement them into your own life. Obviously, today we're diving into the law of vibration and how to elevate your frequency. And I'm sure some of you guys, if not all of you, have touched on that at some point in time, at least kind of done a deep dive on the law of vibration. And the way to think about it is, law of vibration is like the big dog. This is the guy at the top, or the girl. The law of attraction kind of falls underneath. Everything kind of falls underneath. And the way I explain this to clients is that the law of vibration is working around us at all times, whether we give a fuck about it or not. So we may as well use it to our advantage and implement the things that we have control over in order to raise our level of frequency to attract the life that we want. And when we do that, everyone else around us benefits from that as well. Now, I'm sure before we even dive into explaining what the law of vibration is, I'm sure every single one of you at some point in time has been in a room. I think Corey is obviously a prime example of this, with someone where they don't even need to speak and you don't even need to speak to them, and you feel good, or you can just tell that they've got this high energy and you can feed off it. At the very same time, I'm sure you've all been around certain people, and it may have even been you at some point in time. I know it definitely was for me, that suck the energy out of the room, right? So when people are on a really low frequency, they're in that victim mentality, you're in this negative headspace, and people feed off other people's energy. And as you start to understand the law of vibration, you will also start to pick up on how much you feed off others' energy and how easy it is, or how difficult it is sometimes to maintain a high frequency when you don't have the self-awareness and you don't have the perspective of trying to protect your own energy and protect your own power when you're in certain situations. And the beauty of understanding the law of vibration is we'll have the self-awareness, we'll have the understanding of how to protect that energy. All right. And how we can start to focus on making sure that we don't continually drop down, because what's going to happen throughout the day is we have multiple choices. We have multiple decisions to make throughout the day as to whether or not we stay at the frequency we want to be at, or we let external factors, including events, people, environments, to dictate what our frequency is. Now, for the majority of people, we go through life, I don't want to say we, because everyone on this call after this won't be one of those people, but most people go through life, their whole energy and their whole happiness and their whole level of being is dictated and determined by what happens around them. Some good happens, frequency goes up. Some bad happens, or perceived as bad, frequency goes down. So realistically, you're not even in control of your own life, which is crazy to think about it. When you put it in that perspective, it's very, very crazy to think that some people go through their whole life with zero control of how they feel. But in the end of the day, one of the biggest lessons that I have learned is that we need to take full responsibility for our own life. Not everything is going to be your fault. A lot of the time, there's going to be things that aren't your fault, but things are always your responsibility. Everything is always your responsibility. How you feel, how you react, how your reality looks is your responsibility. And once you get that understanding, you lose a lot of resentment. You lose a lot of stress and anxiety, because you start to realize that you actually have this control over how you get to feel. And when you get to control how you feel and you set intentions of what you want to attract and how you want to feel, ultimately, that's what you start to see in your reality. And we'll go through some examples as we go through these slides. Now, typically, I don't do slides in presentations. I'm an absolute spud when it comes to putting together a lot of these slides and all this type of stuff. So I put together one that probably looks like it was made by a year 2 student, but you just have to bear with me, and we'll roll through this now. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll dive in. There's going to be a few aspects of this where I'll kind of read through some of the definitions, I guess, on the screen. But outside of that, as I said, I'm going to keep it quite conversational and relaxed and run through a few real life examples of how this plays out so you guys can use it. I think one of my favorite pieces of feedback I get from people who listen to the podcast or consume my content, or that I'm fortunate enough to meet in person, is that I always keep my content and everything super relatable and just real. There's no kind of sugarcoating this shit. It's it needs to be relatable and it needs to be actionable, because at the moment, in particular, the amount of access we have to content every single day, we literally have at our disposal as much content as we could possibly ever imagine or need. But it's not enough to know the information. We must understand how to actually utilize it. We need to implement it. I've definitely been in cycles where I will consume just copious amounts of content, whether that be with self-improvement and personal development, whether it's fitness, whatever it is, business. And you get in this cycle of just consuming content and doing fuck all with it. So you may as well not have even consumed that content. Okay, so it's always about you taking away some actionable steps and actually putting it to practice and getting uncomfortable, which is something we're going to talk about super soon. Because again, before I go into this slide, I told you I'd get sidetracked at some point, but I feel like this is important. And I'm sure Corey has spoken about this within his community many, many times. But what I've come to the understanding of, and something that I am very conscious of daily now, is that in order to see any form of change in your life, any kind of change, we have to be willing to lean into the discomfort, lean into the resistance, and be more than okay with feeling the unfamiliar. Okay, so when something is comfortable and when something is familiar, it means that we've experienced it before, which means that nothing new is going to come from it. All right. But the problem is the unfamiliar, the uncomfortable, and the unknown is often scary, depending on how you think about it. It's scary. But the craziest shit is that so many people go through life genuinely feeling uncomfortable and unhappy and negative every single day of their life. But it gets to a point where it's so comfortable and safe because it's familiar that we stay in it. Because when you think about the change is difficult because we have to go into the unknown, and it becomes the unfamiliar. So then we don't make that change because we're so scared of what it looks like on the other side of it. All right, but on the other side of resistance is growth and change, and that's what we're going to kind of focus on today. So let's dive in. All right, bring up this little slide. All right, so elevating our frequency. So we're obviously talking about the law of vibration and our energetic frequency. So we are all already connected to everything that we desire. If we want to attract it, we must be on the same frequency. Everything is constantly in motion. So the second universal law, the law of vibration, posits that everything, every atom, object, and living thing is in constant motion and vibrating at a specific frequency. So everything's constantly in motion. This wallet that I've got right here is in motion. Our bodies are in motion. Everything is constantly vibrating at a certain frequency and constantly in motion, even if it seems solid. So the only difference between one object and another is the rate of its vibration. Even solid objects that we perceive as static, such as cement or a desk, are vibrating at a slow speed. Your body, on the other hand, vibrates at an extremely high rate. Our thoughts, like everything else in the universe, are energy. And they vibrate at different frequencies depending on the nature of the thought. Our thoughts are cosmic waves that are so powerful that they penetrate all space and time. And our thoughts and feelings control the vibration of our body. We have the power to dictate the frequency of our being by choosing and directing our thoughts. Your emotional states dictate the vibration that your body is in. And to a large extent, these vibrations dictate how you experience life because they set up resonance with anything that is on the same frequency. So I often use this example with clients, right? If I want to listen to a certain radio station, whatever that radio station is, I'm in my car and I want to listen to this radio station to hear these songs, and my frequency of my radio is on a completely different frequency to what that station is. I can want to listen to that station as bad as I want. I can write it down. I can tell my friends. I can tell fucking everyone in the world that I want to listen to this station. But if my frequency doesn't match the frequency of that station, I am not going to hear that radio channel. Same with TV, same with anything, right? So when we think about that and we put that into perspective with our fucking life, we have people who set these goals and intentions, right? And setting an intention is one of, if not the most important thing when it comes to attracting things. I often use the example of, with the law of attraction and manifesting, setting an intention and trying to manifest is just like paid ads on like paid marketing. Step one, we set the intention. With paid marketing, we go into Google and we type in what we want, right? Whatever that may be. I've got this this battery bank, whatever you want to call it, power bank by July. If I go in Google and type in, I want a black July power bank, that's the equivalent of me setting an intention and declaring what I actually want, which is something that so many people don't do. We get frustrated with the outcome that we have, but we have never actually declared what we want. Okay, so we're hoping to arrive at a destination that we've never actually put into the GPS. Now, after I've typed this in on Google, retargeting with paid ads works in the way of every time you go onto social media, you're going to start getting these ads and retargeted towards this black power bank by July. Now, the way that works with us is that we have this thing called RAS, Reticular Activation System. Think about the last time you decided you wanted to buy a new car or maybe a certain pair of shoes. You've really declared what it is that you want. All of a sudden, you go outside, every fucking car that you see every second car is the one that you want. They've always been there. We've just never been consciously aware of them because we never declared the intention and became conscious about what it is that we actually want. So now all of a sudden we're conscious of it and it's at the top of our our mind all of the time, and we're constantly thinking about it, and we're becoming intentional about what we do, the way we feel, and what we pay attention to, which increases the likelihood of us actually achieving this thing. And in the case of paid ads, we get retargeted enough. If we badly want it, then we're probably going to buy it in the end. We're probably going to join the course or join whatever it may be. So in simple terms, when we feel good, coming back to the frequency, sorry, I got sidetracked. When we come to the frequency stuff, when we feel good, we attract more things that make us feel good. When we feel shit and buy into the shit feeling, we attract more shit. Whatever you place your focus on, you receive more of. So something that I've been focusing in with a lot of clients lately is just this very, very simple concept. What we focus on is what we get more of. All right. So when you put it into perspective, it's very simple stuff. Okay. I'm going to use a couple of examples in a second. So let's use a couple of examples, right? Think about the last time you had a pretty shitty day. All right. You might wake up in the morning, have a shit sleep. You wake up and the first thing you kind of say to yourself is, I slept like shit. Don't feel that good. Can't be bothered with today. So you're already operating on a low frequency. We're focusing on the negative. As I said before, what we focus on, we get more of. So our frequency is low. Our attention and our consciousness is towards a negative thing. And we're going to attract more on that frequency. It's pretty simple stuff. Get in your car, you go to drive to work, you get cut off in traffic and you lose your shit. What's this fuckwit doing? And you dive into that and you get affected by someone else. All right. Again, you're giving your power to someone else. You're letting someone else dictate, or something else dictate how you feel. Your frequency is now coming up and down based off what happens in your reality, which is crazy when you think about it. Then you start talking negatively to yourself. All right. The problem that so many people have is that they spend all their time talking about shit they don't want to happen instead of focusing on what they do want to happen. All right. Think about, let's say you want to have a birthday party outside next Saturday and you live in Melbourne and you're going, geez, I fucking hope it's not raining next Saturday. And it's probably going to be raining next Saturday. But this plays out in many ways. Think about, you don't want to bump into someone and all you're thinking about is shit. I really hope I don't see this person today. It's like the first person you see when you get to work or whatever. Happens all the time. You're about to go out. You need to be somewhere. You're already running late. So you're at a low frequency already. All right. And then you're going, shit, I hope there's not a heap of traffic on the way to this place. And all of a sudden there's a heap of traffic. We are responsible for our reality. So we are continuously receiving more of what we focus on. When we focus on the negative, we get more of the negative. All right. So what we need to do is flip it on its head and start thinking about only the stuff that we do want, or that we do want to happen, or the way that we do want to feel. It's a very, very, very simple process, but it can be hard to put into practice when we've been doing the opposite for so long. So I had a good friend of mine who's been in a pretty shit headspace lately, who we've been spending a heap of time together this last few weeks doing sessions like this, really. And I started talking to him about this concept of like, what you focus on, you get more of. And even if we're talking about stuff we don't want, the universe doesn't really care, right? If I say, I hope I'm not late to work, the universe doesn't go, oh, Danny hopes he's not late to work. All the universe hears is late to work. So we started to get more of that. So with my friend these past couple of weeks, we've been chatting through a bunch of these concepts, and they started to come to the conclusion, or start to come to the realization that a lot of the outcomes I've had in my life are actually my fault or my responsibility, because I've almost spoken them into existence. A lot of these things that have happened that I perceive as negative have been spoken to existence from me, from this person in particular. So in the past 2 weeks, they've flipped that on their head. Right? Every time we have the decision, we have that choice to make. Do I focus on the negative or the positive? And you flip it and you go, all right, I'm going to talk and think about what I do want to happen and what I do want to attract. And that's where my focus stays, regardless of what's happening externally, which is hard to do sometimes. And all of a sudden that you actually start to focus, you see more of what you focus on. So you're starting to get more of a positive outcome and a positive reality. And this plays out often. Now, one of the best examples that I can give you guys is when it's your birthday, right? Now I'm going to make an assumption that most people here enjoy their birthday. Hopefully. If you don't, then just disregard this example. Most people enjoy their birthday. Now I could wake up on a Monday and it's my birthday. It's a Monday, pouring rain. I've got a day full of shit meetings with work, and there's nothing really that exciting. It's a pretty boring day. I'm still going to have the best day, and I'm going to love every bit of it. I'm going to sit through these meetings and feel good all day. I'm not going to walk outside and think twice about the fact that it's raining. I'm going to enjoy the day. I'm going to have a really positive day. All because the only reason why this Monday is different to any other Monday is because I've declared that I should feel good. It's my birthday. I've made the decision that I should feel good today. I feel like I've got a reason to feel good. Right? And look at how simple that process is, or look at how powerful that can be when you just make a conscious decision that I should feel good today, and I deserve to feel good today. There's every reason for me to feel good today because it is my birthday. But in reality, there's absolutely no reason why that can't be every single day. And how is that Monday any different to any other Monday? Now, ideally, hopefully for everyone on this call, your reality, it doesn't matter what fucking day it is, right? You feel that same way every single day, and that's the life that we want to live. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's not the case. All right, moving on. So the way that most people look at their manifestation, or look at the intention or the goal that they've set for themselves, is like this. You've got you down the bottom, and in the distance, you have this thing that you're trying to attract up here, the top, the goal. You down the bottom, goal at the top. Now, in between you and that goal is time and space. Now, when we think of something in this perspective, we are living or sitting in a lack mindset. So we're saying we don't have what we need to feel a certain way. So we're sitting in lack. Now, go back to what I said just before. What we focus on is what we get more of. If I'm in lack and I'm declaring that I'm in lack, I'm going to get more of what I don't want. I'm going to get more of the outcome that I don't want, because I'm saying that I don't have this thing that I need to feel a certain way. All right, so there's time and space. We automatically go, all right, I'm trying to attract a $200,000 a year income, but at the moment I'm making $50,000. I'm here, $200,000 is here. It seems so far out of reach that instantly we go into overwhelm, we go into anxiety, we almost go into like, is this even possible for me? This is where a lot of the limiting beliefs come up as well. But in the process, we think about all the time and all the things that need to happen in order for us to get there. We think logically. Now, again, I'm sure this comes up in the Set the Standard community. We have to start thinking illogically. There's a reason why we think logically, because it's the way we've been programmed. Okay, so I was chatting with a client about self-limiting beliefs just this morning. And they were, we were talking about the reason why anyone is the way they are is because of their experiences, their traumas, their environment, their consistent thoughts, their habitual thoughts and actions, all right, their limiting beliefs, and what they've been exposed to. So the level of stuff that I get to do on a daily basis now would have seemed like an impossible thing for me if you had to ask me 10 years ago. But that was purely because I'd never been exposed to this level of thinking. I'd never been exposed to what was genuinely possible for me, because I put myself in this little box based off what everyone else around me was doing and what I'd experienced and the stories I was telling myself daily and what my parents had done and what my friends were doing. And that was fucking it. I'd never even considered that there was anything else, until I started surrounding myself with people who were on a higher frequency, who were doing bigger things, until I started to get out of my comfort zone and I start to change what I believe is possible. Now, when we have a limiting belief, the process, and everyone's probably different, but for me, it's like, if I'm down this bottom part here and I've got this goal up here, and instantly I start to think of these limiting beliefs, obviously that brings me to a low frequency. But what you have to understand is that, firstly, identifying the limiting belief is super important. Secondly, we need to look at what the underlying reason as to why that belief is there is. Next, we need to look at evidence as to why it's not true. So I had a client the other day. We were talking through how she didn't feel worthy. She didn't feel like she was good enough for anything, for acceptance, for love, for a good career, for money, for happiness, abundance, all of that stuff. And a lot of it was based off the fact that her relationship with her mum left her that way. The way she experienced growing up with her mum, and the stuff, the way her mum had treated her and everything, had led to this point where she had this limiting belief that she was not enough, and she wasn't good enough, and she was not worthy of anything. So the way I explained it to her, and the way we even get to the point where we can start to think logically by removing these limiting beliefs, is if my dad from the age of, from when I was born until I was 10 years old, if my old man told me every fucking day that the sky's red, the sky's red, the sky's red, and he just drills this into me, and I get to the point where I genuinely believe the sky's red, no matter how much I believe it, doesn't make it true. The sky's fucking blue. So I can have this belief that I strongly believe, and that ultimately dictates and determines how I see reality. But when I start to have the self-awareness and a perspective of looking at evidence as to how that's not true, and I realize that the sky is blue, then all of a sudden I have the power to start changing that limiting belief and remove that limiting belief. And that's what we kind of need to become aware of and conscious of when we're in this little process of starting to remove these beliefs, to start to allow ourselves to understand and believe that we're capable of so much more. And I think a big part of this is being in stuff like this. I know a big part of it is, right? It's constantly being able to be leveled up in your way of thinking, normalizing things that aren't normal for you at the moment, normalizing the way of thinking big and surrounding yourself with people and in environments that allow you to continually expand and grow. But what we need to do, instead of this example on the screen, so we're here, goal here, we need to flip it on its head and flip it upside down. And this is where the law of vibration comes into play. So now, instead of me going to the goal or you going to the goal, you are embodying the version of yourself that you will be when you achieve that goal, and becoming that version and embodying that version of yourself now before it happens. Okay, and this is where we're going to talk about how we do that with the frequency. I spent a week with Dr. Joe Dispenza earlier in the year, and this is a lot of the stuff we talked about, is sitting in the meditations and feeling the emotions and the feelings of having the outcome we want ahead of time. And when we do that, we get to a point where we don't need anything or anyone or any environment in order to make us feel a certain way, because we already feel it. And as you guys would have experienced in some way or another, our body and our mind don't need to actually experiencing anything in particular in like reality for us to experience it, like for our body and our mind to actually experience it at the time. So think about someone who's been in like a car crash. It could be 2 years down the track, they're sitting out front of a cafe, drinking a latte and having some scrambled eggs, and they hear some tires screech and their body goes into the exact same response as what it did when they were actually in a car crash. We can flip that again and use it to our advantage by positively allowing our body and our mind to experience feelings and emotions of what we are trying to attract. This is where things like meditation are so powerful, and we'll get to that really soon. But meditation, intention setting, breath work, even just getting out of your comfort zone with things like cold showers and ice baths and whatever, we get to determine what we want to embody as a person, as a human now. So now we're here, we're on the frequency of what we're trying to attract. So all of a sudden, we're not going to the goal. We're not going to the attraction. The attraction's coming to us. And when we do that, our focus is on the what. So we're so clear on the what, but we don't give a fuck about the how or the when. And that's where the illogical part comes in. We're not coming back to check every 2 seconds whether or not it's worked yet. Now we've got our goal or what we're trying to attract, because if we already had it, we wouldn't be checking. So once you start to understand this, it's like, for me, it absolutely fucking blew my mind. I was like, holy shit. And this works for everything, right? Like I talk about this with fitness clients. If I've got someone who wants to have 6-pack abs by summer, not that that should be not that that should always be your goal. I think a lot of people are disappointed by the time they get to that goal in realizing that it's not that great. But anyway, either way, whatever your goal is, right? If I'm someone who hasn't taken care of their health, not taken care of their training and nutrition, and they decide they want to achieve this level of physique, they can either do the things, tick the boxes all the way until they hopefully get to this result, and they think they're going to feel good when they get there. Now, maybe they will, right? But at the end of the day, they haven't really changed. They've just done the stuff that's necessary in order to get there. Now, in that meantime as well, if they have a week where they can't get to the gym for the amount of sessions they wanted to go, or if they have a week where they're sick, in their head, they're thinking, shit, now I'm off track. Now I've kind of failed. Now my frequencies come down again because I'm not following through with what I said I was going to do. But if we reverse those roles, if from day one, this person embodies everything that they would embody if they were already that fit and healthy version of themselves now, right? What are the habits of someone who is in great shape already? What's their way of thinking? What are their decision-making processes when they're deciding what they want to have to eat? Are they focusing on their hydration daily, or is it something that's a chore? Are they prioritizing sleep? What environments are they surrounding themselves in, and content are they consuming, and all this stuff? So from day one, I feel like I'm already at the end goal. So in week 4, when I miss a session in the gym, someone who's already fit and healthy, if they miss a gym session, they don't go, oh, fuck it, I'm going to pack it up and then start again. It's part of life. You're going to miss a session, and it is what it is. Nothing changes. And we can use this to our advantage in whatever goal that we have. So I often use the example of me, if I want to have the #1 podcast in the world. Actually, I'll use a better example. I had a client in real estate who did $3 million last financial year. $3 million in their company, which is fantastic. Their clear intention, their clear goal was to do $8 million this year. So the conversation we had was, why would your company do $8 million this year if you're operating, every part of you as a person and every part of your company is operating off a company that does $3 million? Right? Because it's a huge jump, and they've been pretty consistent with this number of around that 3 million for a couple of years. So why would it go to 8? And the focus points for this person in particular was changing their frequency. It was, all right, for a company that's doing $8 million a year at the moment, what do their systems look like? What's their communication skills like? What's their time management look like for the CEO, which in this case it was this person. What are they spending their spare time doing? How do they react and how do they respond when they lose a client or when they gain a client? Does an $8 million company, does a CEO of an $8 million company just completely shit the bed and completely have a massive downfall when a client doesn't sign because now they're thinking they're not going to reach 8 million? No, they don't. They have an expectation and a level of frequency of just knowing that they are operating at this level, and a small win here or there doesn't change, or a loss even doesn't change their frequency. They stay at this level because the way that I look at it now is that we have a baseline. We have this baseline frequency. Everyone does. For someone who's in that victim mentality, who's always at a low frequency, their baseline is super low. But what you need to understand is that we always come back to baseline. So if you think of the example of someone who has won the lotto, right? They won the jackpot on lotto. And there's someone who doesn't necessarily manage money well. They're not that ambitious, but they just got lucky and won the lotto. Their frequency is so low. So they weren't actually ready to receive this level of abundance and success. So when they receive it with this level of money, I don't know what the stat is, so I'm just going to make it up. Let's just say 85%. There's a high percentage of people who win the lotto that within 2 to 3 years are back to where they started in terms of money, because they never changed. Their frequency was never ready to receive that amount, and nothing really changed for them. So there's a big misalignment. Now, if we choose actively daily how we want to feel, how we want to respond in certain situations, what content we want to consume, what environment we want to surround ourselves with, what people we want to be around, what level of success and thinking that we want in this period of time, then our baseline is so much higher. So when we do have something that brings our frequency down, all of a sudden our low frequency is higher than what our high frequency was when we were low. But the main thing you need to remember is that you'll always come back to baseline. So if my baseline's here, then at such a high frequency, I'm attracting more things on that level. I hope this is making sense so far. If not, yeah, I actually can't see the comments at the moment, which is probably...
There was one question someone said, so would you say diet plays a role in our vibration as like meat of like a low energy
100%.
or fruit isn't a high energy type of vibe?
100% I do. Yeah. I really do. And I don't think, I'm not going to sit here and say what you should and shouldn't do with your nutrition, but I think the way I look at it, I think without a doubt, the quality of the food and the nutrients and the nutrition density of your food that you use is going to play a role in your physical frequency, just like exercising does, just like getting in a cold shower and ice bath does, for sure. The way that I think about the nutrition side of things is that if your body is a supercar, right? If your body's a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or whatever, you wouldn't go to the service station and put in the cheapest fuel you could possibly find into that supercar and expect it to run well or not break down or perform at its best. So our bodies are no different. So in order to operate at that high level, which it needs to, which it should be, because our body, we want to treat our body like that, provide it with the high quality fuel it needs and deserves. Buy a Ferrari and then go and put the shittest fuel in it and treat it like shit. We wouldn't do that, but we do that with our bodies for some reason, right? I'm not saying that you should never enjoy yourself and have things that, my approach to nutrition personally is tracking my calorie intake and tracking my protein intake and keeping it flexible to an extent where I don't restrict myself from absolutely everything that I know I can't go the rest of my life without. So, without a doubt, I still have certain foods and whatnot and fit them in my calorie intake that aren't necessarily of a high frequency, but 90% of it is. And I'm actively choosing how I want to feel. And I'm understanding that the way I think, the way I act, the way I feel, what I provide my body with, the stimulus I provide my body with is playing a big role on ultimately what my frequency is. So again, it comes back to you taking responsibility and knowing that you ultimately get to control what your reality looks like purely through thought alone, through your habits and actions, through your environment and the people you spend the most time with and all that type of stuff. So we'll move on to this next one. I think some of this is quite obvious, but I want to run through some of it just to break it down a little bit. Ultimately, when we do things that make us feel bad or when we feel in a negative state, our frequency is low, right? And the opposite applies as well. So what lowers our frequency, things like negative self-talk, right? Now think about and also talking about others behind their back. I remember when I first really started to understand the law of vibration and energy frequencies, I went out of my way to remove judgment, right, towards other people, towards outcomes. I didn't, no matter whether there was any ill intention or not, I removed myself from conversations where people were talking about others behind their back in a way that they wouldn't talk about them in person, right? And that might be friends, that could be just anyone, right? It could be seeing someone in the gym who's doing something that looks ridiculous, and then you talking about them behind their back to someone else in the gym, like stuff, all that type of shit. What you put out is what you're going to get back. So it's just like a boomerang. If I throw out a boomerang, it's going to come back. If I throw out shit energy, it's going to come back. All right. So doubting ourselves, complaining, comparing, judging others, victim mindset, anger, shame, controlling and forcing outcomes. These are all things that lower our frequency. And I'm not saying that after this session today, you guys are all just going to be the perfect fucking humans and you're going to cruise around at the highest frequency ever and everything's going to be perfect. But you're going to have this awareness now. And earlier in the year, I was super fortunate to sit down with Gabby Bernstein, someone that I kind of started to understand this concept through Gabby, to be honest, through her books. And she talked about in the podcast about when we are at a low frequency, it's not about going from 0 to 100. So people, when they feel shit, they try and ultimately find something that's going to allow them to reach this ultimate level of abundance and happiness straight away because it's an uncomfortable feeling. It's about climbing the ladder and climbing that ladder back to a higher frequency. So things like meditation, which I'm just going to touch on for slightly longer in one sec. Breath work, exercise, right? So training and movement, and also those little dopamine responses you're getting from doing what you said you were going to do when we do things like cold showers and ice baths. Our habits, the music we listen to, right? Think about sometimes when you hear a certain song and your fucking mood goes through the roof and your frequency goes through the roof. It's because you've attached some form of feeling or emotion to this song. Being consciously aware of your goals and intentions, proper nutrition, generosity. So again, what you put out comes back to you, alignment, and taking action. A book that I feel like every single person on here would benefit from reading or listening to. If you guys don't mind that I give you a suggestion, I guess, is The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. Super short book. So the physical book, I don't really read that much. So if I can get through the book, fucking all of you guys can. But the audio book is something that I listen to literally like every day at the moment. And again, coming back to actually implementing some of the stuff you listen to. But one of the laws in that 7 spiritual laws of success is the law of giving. And this kind of plays into this frequency stuff, right? It's like, if I'm giving without any expectation, and I've got this detachment to whether or not I'm going to get it back, it's like I'm staying at this frequency. And I want to use kind of one more example before we keep moving on, just quickly around, and I was chatting about this with Corey before, kind of chatting about it with him before we got on to the call and let all you guys in today. So the frequency side of things, as I said, is constantly an active choice. So recently I did a bit of a restructure with my online coaching business, and I've been having a bunch of calls with clients, whatever. And 2 weeks ago, the first 2 weeks, I had 2 really good weeks in my online business, the best they've ever been. So my frequency is super high. And I have the awareness now of probably seeing that I was allowing that external validation to allow to determine whether or not I was at that frequency or not. But there was 2 kind of instances that really stuck out to me as to how the law of vibration has actually started to work in my favor now that I'm more conscious of it. I had one client who we jumped on a call. They wanted to jump on board and start working with me for a high amount of money that I'd pretty much never been paid in one sum from anyone, realistically, in terms of a client. So it was a good win. So it allowed my frequency to go up, and I felt good about it, and felt good about my coaching and all the rest of it. Within 2 days, this person basically changed their mind, right? And the initial reaction is like, fuck. Like, the initial reaction is still fuck. But the self-awareness and the perspective allows me to look at it for what it is. So I can either go, I read this email that I got from this client, like literally just before I went to sleep too. So I'm thinking, all right, if I don't reply, they won't really know that I've even read it. I'll just get back to them tomorrow and I'll kind of just whatever. But then I thought to myself, all right, by not replying, I'm sending out this energy and I'm staying at this frequency of like the fact that this person hasn't signed up with me. I'm allowing that to dictate and determine whether or not I feel like a good coach, or whether I feel successful, or whether I feel happy. So I'm allowing something external to dictate how I feel, regardless of whether anyone else knows about it. That's the energy that I'm putting out. So I grab my phone, send back an email along the lines of like, thanks so much for letting me know. Really appreciate your honesty, blah, blah, blah. We'll do the same in your situation. Hope you're well. Have a great week. If you need anything, let me know. That was it. Moved on. Didn't give a fuck. I said to myself, all right, it's just part of the process. This doesn't determine anything. You said that you wanted to attract this level of success. Someone with this level of success would not give a shit about a client not signing on. It wouldn't determine whether or not their business is doing well just off this one person. So that's the energy I tried to put out. Now, 2 days later, a potential client from 2 weeks ago that didn't sign up, randomly on Friday morning, just sent an email through saying, oh, hey, I want to sign up and change my mind. Now, whether this related or not, and whether this is because of the frequency stuff, who really knows, right? But for me, it was just evidence as to how this plays out. I said that I'm going to stay at this frequency instead of allowing myself to drop down based off an external factor. When I stayed at this frequency without trying to force an outcome, without being attached to anything or anyone, success and abundance continued to show itself in reality. So the hard part about this whole frequency shit, guys, is that you're always left with a choice. And the easiest fucking choice is to allow your frequency to go low. If someone cuts you off in traffic, it's so much easier to just get pissed off and than it is to be the bigger person, have perspective, and just leave it and say, all right, who cares? I'm not going to allow someone that I don't know, that I'll never see again, which I don't know what they're going through, the fact that they drove their car in front of me, I'm not going to let that one thing ruin my whole day. The harder choice is to stay out of that and stay at a high frequency. The easier choice leads to a whole day of shit. The harder choice leads to you having a much better day and continuing to attract things from that level of frequency that we have set for ourselves right at the very beginning. So the goal is to think, act, behave, and feel like our intention or our aspiration is already a reality. All right, it's hard to do, right? It's not easy to do, because when we don't have evidence in front of us as to how anything is actually true, it's very difficult to have a belief, or it's very difficult to feel a certain way when there's no physical evidence in front of us that we are going to attract this amount of money, or that we're going to attract this partner, or that we're going to have this this level up in our career, or that we're going to be driving this car, or whatever the attraction is. When the evidence is not there, it's hard to have that level of frequency. But as I said, if we stay at this frequency, this thing gets attracted to us instead of us constantly waiting for something to make us feel a certain way. So when we show the universe, we're almost done here, guys. When we show the universe that we already feel the way we want to feel without needing anything or anyone to do so, we send out the message to say that we are ready to receive. All right? We are ready to receive because we're feeling this way already. We've created the energy for it. We're right fucking here. We've allowed our habits, our thinking, our environment, and everything to be of someone who already has this thing we're trying to attract. So we're ready to allow it to come in. This stuff is fucking easy. In theory, in practice, a little harder to put into practice, but everything, nothing worth having is fucking easy, right? So it's a matter of having the awareness, continually making the choice. The biggest part of this that I want you guys to take away is that you are responsible and you have multiple choices every single day to choose what frequency you want to stay at. And for me, everyone's very different. I don't think, having a morning routine is not necessarily like this fucking magic pill to whether or not you have a good life or not. For me, I use meditation and I use something like a cold shower first thing in the morning to allow myself to choose what frequency I want to start my day off with. If I get out of bed and I'm fucking tired, just like had a big week and I've got a big day, jump in a cold shower, sit in a meditation where I'm feeling the emotions and the feelings of this outcome being a reality now, so that by the time I leave the house, I am walking around at this level of frequency and consciousness of someone who has what I'm trying to attract. And that's as hard as it gets. And then our goal, our job is to stay in that frequency and not fall out of it. And in time, that gets better. Not going to happen overnight, but in time, it gets much better. And the more often we do that, just like how a limiting belief is created, a belief that works in our favor or an outcome that works in our favor occurs when we take an action or we repeat a thought enough that it becomes a habit and that it becomes subconscious, and that's when our reality changes. All right. So the main thing is that we stop waiting and we just make the decision now that this is how we're going to feel. This is what our reality is going to be. And we trust that it's happening. We're not coming back to check whether it's happened yet or how far away it is. We have trust in the fact that it's on its way and it'll show itself in whatever fucking way it wants to. It's not up to us to determine and dictate how it shows itself. It's just allowing it to happen and not blocking the ability to actually receive it. And I think if you make these changes, I guarantee if you make these changes, very simple stuff, even just starting to focus on your intention and replace talking about what you don't want to start thinking about what you do want and saying what you do want actively over saying what you don't want, then even that in itself will make a significant difference. How's everyone feeling? That make any sense or what? Fucking hope so. Brilliant. See if there's any other questions, you feel free to jump in. Corey, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, we sure do. So someone just asked, it was Michael Little, who was just like, love your energy. And he's also keen to hear your thoughts on how you respond to people in your life, like family or close friends who are in a lower frequency.
Yes. This is a really good question. Something that I struggle with for a very long time. And I'm not going to say that I've completely nailed it now, because I definitely haven't, but my perspective on it's changed a lot. So first of all, you come back to the fact that, again, it's our responsibility and we have an active choice as to how much time we spend around these people. And I think the hard part for a lot of people is if it is family, it's a tough decision to make. But in the end of the day, we need to choose how much time we spend with these people and remove ourselves from these situations sometimes. But that's not always going to be an option for some people. And that we also don't want to have to rely on running away from shit to fucking to feel a certain way either, right? So a bit of a realization that I had lately, and I really don't actually know whether this answers the question or not, but hopefully it does, is that everyone is literally the way everyone is the way that they are because of what they've experienced, any of their traumas, any of their environment, what they've been told over and over again, and what they've been exposed to. So I used the example before of not even being able to imagine that I would be getting to do the stuff I'm doing now or networking with the people that I am or whatever it is 10 years ago. There's no way I would have ever expected that. It's because I'd never been exposed to that level of thinking. So there was a situation not a situation. There was a something that happened a while back, right? And I was around someone and they were constantly kind of like talking in a way that for me, my kind of level of awareness, whatever, now I was kind of looking at it going like, I just fucking can't understand how you're thinking this way, or how you can't see how obvious it is that this needs to change, or how you're going to continue to act this way, or stay in this victim mentality, or not take responsibility for yourself and whatever it may be. And I sat in that kind of frequency and that frustration. So I lowered my frequency, and then that kind of led to me putting off a low energy as well. And then the next morning after my meditation, I was like sitting there and like fucking literally almost was like in fucking tears, which is quite bizarre. But I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how fucking egotistical am I to look at someone else, even if they're a rude person, even if they're someone who is in a victim mentality or whatever it may be, but how egotistical am I to sit here and say that I know how they should be, or how they should react, or I know how they should speak to others, or I know how they should treat others, because I have no fucking idea that if I'd experienced everything they'd experienced, if I had their level of mental awareness and consciousness, if I had been through the traumas that they'd been through, if I'd been in the environments that they'd been through and I'd experienced everything they'd experienced, that I wouldn't be exactly the same way. I don't know that. So when I had that, I just completely fucking changed my perspective on it. Corey?
Just had some other questions in there. I hope everyone noted that one down. We've got 2 here. So one is, at what point did you realize all the stuff you're talking about, did something specific occur, or did it just naturally come to fruition? And the other one's an easy one. That's what meditations do. But the first one is, at what point did you realize all of the stuff that you're talking about, and did something specific occur to make that happen, or did it just naturally come to fruition?
I hope I'm answering this question right. But I think the way that I see it is that even now, when I look at certain outcomes that I've had in my life, now with perspective, I didn't see it at the time. But with perspective now, I can see how a lot of these things occur. And it was based off the fact that in that period of time, I was at a certain higher frequency, or when negative outcomes happened, it was because that's what I'd fixated on. And actively, as I started to do more of this work, this inner work, and meditate, and to work with mentors, and to have conversations with higher level people, and have conversations with people that are going to continue to push me to grow and whatnot, and start to understand these concepts, I actually just put them to work. I actually started letting them play out. Now, since I've had the awareness around this too, when I fall into a low frequency, which still happens, I have so much more awareness around it now. And then when I pull myself out of it, I'm like, fuck, man. I'm talking about this shit with people all the time, and there's still times where I fall back into it. But when I fall into it, I'm like, oh, I was at a low frequency that day because of this person or this thing. And then when I was in that low frequency, all this other bad shit continued to happen afterwards. And a lot of it was because of me. It wasn't because of them, or it wasn't because of anything. It was because of me. So I don't even know if that answers the question, but I think just through experience, like up until probably the age of maybe like 23 or something like that, I'd done no personal development whatsoever, pretty much, until I started meditating, until I started doing some reading, until I started networking with other people, learning meditation, breath work, all this type of stuff. And that's when I started to experience a lot of this. And it's just like anything, like I said right at the start of the call, it's like I just go and experience something and put myself in that uncomfortable feeling and the unknown and the unfamiliar, see what the result is and see how I respond and what I learn from it, and then share those experiences and you continue to learn. Like that's the biggest thing, is that none of this, it's just a continual learning curve. It's like there's always something to work on. And a lot of the stuff that I have worked on is the stuff that needs to come back to and recurringly come back to and come and continue to build that awareness and continue to learn and grow from these things. And that's why it's so enjoyable, I find. Is because you always have something to work on, and there is always growth that is right there for you to take. And every time something pops up that is perceived as a negative or an outcome that you don't want, I look at it now as my ticket for growth. All right, that's my ticket for growth, and that is the test. It's like, okay, this is how my old self would respond to this. How would the highest version of myself respond to this? And then let's fucking go. Everything happens for a reason. Now, meditations, I use a varied range of different meditations, but I think the most impactful ones for me have been Joe Dispenza's work. So whether it be, the New Potentials podcast, meditation by Joe, the Blessing of the Energy Centers is a really good one. Some of his walking meditations. I started off with really, really short meditations, and now we'll do, most of the time 45 to an hour. But when I do shorter meditations, typically when I do the shorter ones, I use Bob Proctor. He's got a couple of free, really good ones on YouTube. There's like a 10 and a 20-minute one all around abundance and really playing into this law of vibration stuff in those meditations. And that's why I like them a lot. Very practical, very good way to raise that frequency, particularly when it's not right there. My diet. So what's my diet like? I kind of touched on it before. I track my calorie intake. At the moment, I'm trying to lose a bit of fat. So I just genuinely believe that there's no need to, like, guesswork should never be involved when it comes to what your body composition is. Just like business, you would never kind of not have the awareness of what's coming in and what's coming out and just fucking hope for the best. And for a lot of people, when it comes to how they look, that's the way they approach it. So for me, there's no need to do that. So, at the moment, sticking to a calorie deficit, making sure that I reach my protein minimum for the day. I'm kind of going off 6 slightly lower days, 1 higher day. So I'm still ending up at the same average for the week, but kind of using some calorie cycling to make sure that mentally it's easier to stick to, and physically I continue to see those benefits as the cut goes on. And 90% of the calories I choose are, nutrient dense whole foods. And if there is something that I'm craving, or if I want to go out with my missus and have a glass of wine or whatever, it's not something that I completely restrict, because I just don't think you should ever cut something out that you can't go the rest of your life without. And that's my approach. I used to be a lot more detailed with tracking carbs and fats as well, whereas now I just hit a calorie target, hit a protein minimum, keep it as simple as possible and consistent as possible.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it at that because the time is up. If you guys have any other questions, please send Danny a DM or really quickly chuck them into the chat, because we will save those that were there. I just want to have everyone just to give a virtual round of applause for Danny. Woo-hoo. Thanks for coming in. I just want to real quickly, just in 5 words, just have a couple people just mention just one takeaway that they have got. Jump straight in there. Ricky, what's one takeaway you had?
One takeaway for me would be actually aligning yourself with the energy in order to attract the thing, in comparison to setting the thing as something you need to work towards. You know what I mean?
Yes, that is absolutely beautiful. Dos.
Would have to be don't control the outcome. That's something I do time and time again. I want something to happen far too quickly. So, that was a good one.
Oh, yeah. Bridget.
I think that we have more power than we realize.
That is awesome. Lukey.
I think just emotional awareness and being able to, control your emotions a lot is a huge factor to me. I also know when I tend to lose my temper a little bit, it fucks with the vibrational energy.
Hayden.
I would say just to be in alignment with who you are, really, kind of just surrender into it. What you're feeling is a calling for you to get into your higher self, basically. So just feel that and go with it.
Johnny.
Surrounding yourself with people with the same frequency levels for sure. All you.
That is the best. Well, thank you so much, Danny, for coming, spending your time, putting all that together. That was like super value. My biggest takeaway was just that like emotions really are the indicators for frequency, and that like for raising your frequency and to fight for your frequencies as well. Like regardless of like what it is to get you back there, it's like we've really got to fight through that, whether it's feeling it, whether it's surrounding yourself with other people, was getting like out of your comfort zone in order to make sure that we are in that position. And it like takes a bit of energy and a bit of effort, but that is way better than the lesser. So Danny, thank you so much. If anyone's got any questions or would like to stay in the loop, please follow Danny on Instagram or check out any of his podcasts. Also, please follow the Set the Standard community, because we have a bunch of these masterclasses coming up that we like to do for everyone for free, which is awesome. So a huge thank you for everyone for coming today. And a huge thank you for Danny for coming on. Every single one of you guys are amazing. And I hope you have the best weekend ever.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Danny.
Thanks, guys.
Woo! What'd you think?
That was great.